Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva
and this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder.
and Liz.
And this is a new list. It is the most hated people contemporary, modern day villains, as it were.
Really like super villains. Like I think there's like a little bit of
Extra villainous.
yeah, like these are people that are like almost Bond villain level, but like not cool, just evil.
Just evil. There's nothing sexy about these
No.
losers. No.
No.
I can't wait to talk about mine. I
Yeah.
learned a lot more about him doing this research, which was interesting. There's so much information. I'm obviously not going to cover all of it, but I'm excited to shit talk a loser today. So that's going to be really fun for me.
That's great.
You know,
Yeah.
I love that any chance I get.
I'm gonna do the same thing. Yeah.
Yay! I'm so glad. And my kid, I just want to talk about my kid for a minute. He is trying out for a musical, which he
Oh.
will be in. It's just like what he'll do.
Right.
And it's absolutely, I sent Diva the video. It's absolutely hilarious watching him like sing. It's the cutest thing ever.
It's really cute. Little kid musicals are the best because it's like you don't have to be good. No one cares. You're just having fun.
Nobody cares. But I will have you know that when I sent you that, he had learned the song 30 minutes prior. So I feel really good.
Yeah, no, he's taking it serious.
Talented little shit. Yeah. Oh my God, he loves it. And he's such a ham. He's gonna have such a great time. So.
Yes.
In any case, what else is new? Anything exciting?
Nothing. Just my glasses are broken, so I look really cool.
I know. They're like crooked. Diva's having to hold them with one hand so they're not like crooked. Beyond like not looking right, it's really annoying when your glasses are crooked. It can actually make you feel sick because it's like you're like on a boat essentially.
I mean,
like
I really need them to see. I have a cool thing where one of my eyeballs unfocuses after like 20 minutes. So I have like a really super specific prescription for that because if I read or look at anything, my eyeballs break. And you know what did it? Grad school. That's what did it.
Yeah, you overuse them.
I read so much.
Like, hey, fuck you. I
read so much. My eyeballs broke. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine have always been bad. When I was young, I had to take eye therapy because I couldn't cross my eyes because my eye muscles are so weak. And as Diva knows, if you catch me when I'm tired or not concentrating, I have a super lazy eye. So you can't tell where I'm looking. I'm kind of looking everywhere because my eyes go. One goes to the right, and one goes to the left.
You're keeping an eye on us. You're keeping an eye on people. I got
my eye, all y'all. Yeah, my lazy ass eye.
Yeah,
that's a fun party trick to like let it go. If I'm not paying attention, if I'm just like relaxing and like not thinking, it will just wander like crazy. So yeah, that's why I wear glasses.
Great.
We both need our glasses.
Yes.
I was 35, I think, the first time I took my glasses off and was like, nope, gotta leave those on all the time now.
Every time I go in, they just get more intense, like more severe because my eyes get worse and worse. Woo!
Yeah. I mean, I'm always supposed to wear my glasses all the time. That's always been the case. But when I was 35 was when I was like, I will die without these. Like I will die without my glasses. I cannot drive. I cannot read. I can't do anything. So that's a fun realization. Like, oh, I'm old and blind and I require literal glass on my face in order to like survive. So pretty fun. But at least I'm not these people we're about to talk about, right?
Right. Or they're victims or anything like that.
Well, right. Obviously. But I would hate to be a despicable piece of shit like the people we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for you to start because, guys, we're veering off course a little bit. This is not something that we typically do.
No.
We're pretty exclusively murderers.
Yeah. But I asked for a pass because this felt too appropriate to the list. This is Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and you know what? I also want to say for the record that we can't say definitively that he didn't murder someone.
What I can say definitively is that he didn't murder himself.
Well, okay, yeah, that. But like, I'm just saying, in his like scumbaggery, it's quite possible he murdered someone or put a hit on someone or
had the capacity to. Absolutely.
I mean, he ruined lives, obviously, and did horrific shit, as we'll talk about. But like,
he's a piece of shit. Yeah, completely. But I do want to say once again that Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself.
Right. We'll get
I
there.
just
We'll get there.
okay. Oh, you're gonna talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We're doing the full Epstein story here.
Oh,
In
I'm
a
excited.
It's a bit
Okay.
on the
I didn't
longer
want to jump the
side.
gun.
It's a bit on the longer side for me, but I scrunched it as scrunched as I could. Okay.
No, I love it. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun on that. I'm just like very much one of those people who's like,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
you're on that team. Yeah. I think
Fuck
the
yeah. Who's
majority
not?
of people are. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
all right.
All right.
So,
Okay.
born in 1953 and raised in New York City, Jeffrey Epstein is a piece of shit. He surprisingly came from humble beginnings, which has really shocked me, actually. I thought he was going to be a born rich kid, but he actually had a housewife mom and a groundskeeper dad, and he was like, grew up middle class.
I mean, I could see, well, depending on the rest of his origin story, I can absolutely understand. It's like he would literally do anything to become rich and kind of
Yeah, that
did.
kind of
So,
vibe. Yeah. He
yeah.
attended some college and didn't graduate, but in a very classic white guy privilege move, which still happens, he began teaching at the fancy private Dalton School in the Upper East Side with no credentials to do
Oh, so
so.
he just faked his way up in there.
Yep. And it's still happens, trust me, in lots of different fields I see or I'm familiar with or I follow, where like an underqualified, under-talented, underperforming white guy just floats up the ladder of jobs and you're like, what? Like, what am I seeing?
Like, how did this happen?
Yeah, so he's doing that, just being like, hey, I'm a white guy, and everyone's like, you got the job, right?
You're gonna fail right on up to the top.
Mm-hmm. At the school, he basically meets the CEO of the investment bank, Bear Stearns, because his kids go there, right? It's a fancy private school. And when he gets fired from the school for what they say is quote unquote poor performance officially, but is said to be related to his creeping on young girls at the school, because he's a creeper from like day one. Like he was creeping, being a predator nonstop from his young age.
Yeah.
The CEO just gives him a job. And again, no qualifications to work at this investment bank, but just he's like a white guy and you're like, you got the job, buddy. Right.
Right.
And because it's the 70s and he's a fancy white guy, he just soars up the ranks magically and is a partner at the firm by 1980. 4 years. That's all it takes.
Okay.
He opens his own consulting firm in 1981. This guy is just really fucking faking it. And his wealth just like skyrockets. By 1992, he owns the largest home in Manhattan. And in the 90s, he begins to run a business managing basically billionaires' money from the U.S. Virgin Islands, where he buys a whole island, which we'll talk about.
Wow. I didn't really realize that he was like that. This is how this happened.
Yeah. And he is basically in his fancy guy prominence. He has tons of famous friends who we'll talk about. He flies around on private planes to his many houses around the world. By many accounts, he also is just gallivanting around. Like he does not work a lot. So his clearly has some kind of employees doing the actual work of managing wealth. He's not doing that. Of course.
He's just stealing their labor.
Yes.
Because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah. In 1991, he gets together with heiress and socialite Ghislaine Maxwell. And his fortune actually may have gotten started through a gift, basically, of $1 bajillion from her dad, disgraced media mogul Robert Maxwell. So what's interesting also, I didn't realize about him, is that like his wealth is all from day one to now still kind of nebulous and bullshit. Like he never really earned all that wealth. It seems like he got some massive starter funds. Like he got some massive starter funds. He was kind of a scammer. Like he wasn't a legitimate businessman. And also there's later stories I didn't have time to talk about where they talk about how he actually wasn't that good at advising or wealth management, like these like skills and these business things. Like he wasn't good at it. He was kind of like a really good con artist of like
so fucking weird.
Flim flam man. But like, yeah, the actual like extent and legitimacy of his wealth is doubted. And it was all in offshore accounts.
And I mean, honestly, I'm being an idiot for being like, that's shocking that a white man was able, like, no, it's not at all.
No.
It's totally normal.
Yeah. So I won't talk too much about his business, but that's basically who this guy is and how he gets so wealthy and powerful. And again, it's not totally clear how he got so wealthy and powerful, but he is.
Okay. But he is. Okay.
He is. That's where we're at here by really by the 80s, early 90s. So with Ghislaine, Jeff, and she has her own story. I'm not going to really get into it here, but like she's a fucking wild person. But Jeff here basically establishes really early on a sex trafficking network of underage girls. He had been assaulting girls. There's charges that come out later since at least the late 70s. So since when he was like 20, 25 or something. So he had been raping girls and women pretty much his whole life. But it's when he gets really, really wealthy in the 90s and gets Ghislaine on his side that like he systematizes it into like a thing instead of individual incidents.
Right.
So basically here's their system. And I don't have time to talk through like each victim because literally he has hundreds of victims.
Right. It's just endless.
And hundreds is lowballing it. So like imagine this is his job full time is sex trafficking girls every day, all day since the early 90s. So like you can't even put a number on it. It's like thousands.
Right.
But their system is as follows. Ghislaine would essentially target and prey on girls that she perceived to be vulnerable in some way. And she had a really acute, disturbing spidey sense about girls who were like in a tight spot or experiencing poverty or like were vulnerable for some reason.
I wonder what happened to her that she knew, which like, I don't care, but I wonder.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. She would offer them a sizable amount of money, maybe like $300, which again, in the 90s when you're poor is like, whoa.
Yeah.
To give Jeffrey a massage. And she would just bill it as like the most innocent massage of all time. And then when they stupidly went, I mean, no, not to victim blame, but like, you know. But
not stupidly, when they naively.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. When they naively went, when they're not thinking it through. Right. Because they're children. They were subjected to horrific sexual assaults by Jeffrey that sometimes escalated up to rape and other times just started with that. So he and Ghislaine would then manipulate these victims and offer them more money to come back and do it again, or in exchange for them going out and finding even more young girls for him to assault. So he would effectively pick certain girls to become recruiters. But he's doing it all with like tons of money dangling in front of their faces. One victim / recruiter described how Jeff told her to find girls, quote, as young as I could find them.
Oh, what?
Yeah. And in Jeff's victim pool were girls as young as 11 and 12.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, taken to Pedophile Island, as we'll talk about here. But he just raped children all around the world in his various properties. But Pedophile Island really stands out, I think, in the lexicon here.
Yeah. So
after it's just one tiny anecdote here. After being raped on the island, one 15-year-old girl tried to escape by swimming off the island. But Jeff sent people after her to physically pull her back in, and Epstein took her passport so she couldn't leave.
Holy fuck. So how long was she there?
Yeah, I didn't get that detail, but I just saw that detail and I was like, that's fucking gnarly.
That's insane.
Ghislaine would also sometimes take part actively in the abuse, massaging the girls and assaulting them as well. So she's not just the recruiter. She was also an abuser.
She's a rapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tons of witnesses at Little St. James Island, which is his private island, saw Epstein boarding his private jet, going around flagrantly with girls who were clearly underage, like who looked like babies. One air traffic controller said, quote, every time he landed or took off, it was always brought up. We'd always be joking, how many kids are on board this time?
Oh my God.
And he said, quote, I compared it to seeing a serial killer in broad daylight. I called it the face of evil.
I mean, truly though, like this is insane that this was just like a thing that just went on forever. Like, oh my God.
Epstein maintained many famous best friends, as we all know. So some of his BFFs, only some, not the full list, include Bill Clinton, who flew on Epstein's private planes with him and frequented Child Rape Island. Woody Allen and Harvey Weinstein, which tracks.
I mean, none of this surprises me except that anybody would be surprised that Bill Clinton's a rapist piece of shit, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Israeli
That's our old president.
Prime Minister Ehud Barak. I'm going to add him in there.
Yeah, this just all sounds right.
Tony Blair, Alec Baldwin, Wexner, the now former CEO of Victoria's Secret, who later said a bunch of shitty things. And of course, Prince Andrew, who later on we would learn about his victims procured for him via Epstein, who would come forward and cause him great scandal appropriately. So,
yeah,
because he's a rapist. And of course, last but not least, we can't forget BFF forever, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Yep. In 2002, Trump said, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side."
And he's just like laughing about that.
He's
just like laughing about it.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, like pretty much if you're partying on this island with Jeff, there's children being raped. Like there's
being raped. And whether or not you're doing it, you're there, you're a part of it, you're condoning it.
We know that's what was happening at this island like 24/7.
Yeah.
In 2016.
And that's why people went there.
Like, yes, 100%. In 2016, a woman known anonymously as Jane Doe filed a lawsuit against Epstein and Trump for sexually assaulting her repeatedly at parties at Epstein's New York City house. But she later withdrew the suit and canceled a press conference she was going to give, and her lawyer later said she was being threatened.
So, that does not surprise me at all. I completely believe that. Yeah. And God, the elites in this world, and I don't want to call them the elites, the predator class in this world are such scumbag pieces of shit. Like, I will celebrate each and every one of their deaths as though it's fucking Christmas and my birthday. Like, I'm so happy when these people die. I'm so happy.
No, like billionaires and people with the most wealth are often like the worst people. It's really direct. I was being nice.
Girl, always.
Being nice. The often was my niceness. Okay.
Don't be nice.
I also forgot that Bill Gates was a close friend of his as well, so that comes in later.
Bill Gates, man. Bill Gates.
Yeah. Oof. Also a Harvard professor named Adam Dershowitz, who was later accused by people of him raping them at the island as well. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Epstein also trafficked girls to his famous friends. He would loan underage girls to his friends and essentially sell them off into sex slavery. He also taped with hidden cameras all in all of his houses. We know for a fact, and Gillen describes the system in detail later, that he would tape them and he would save all of this shit on like CDs or whatever the fuck, labeled, organized, so that he had literally blackmail content on all these famous powerful people in the world.
That's fucking crazy. God, what I wouldn't do to like get my hands on that shit. Except I don't want to get my hands on it because I don't want to be murdered.
Right.
Like, which I absolutely would be murdered in like moments.
Yeah.
But like,
I won't get into it.
I'm sorry. Can I just say how fucking crazy it is that this is just like an open secret, but because we haven't seen tapes proving it, we're just kind of like,
yeah.
I'm sure Bill Clinton raped children, but I haven't seen a video of it. So we're just going to continue on with our lives.
Probably exists, but like, who knows what happened to that little video collection.
Our world is so fucked.
In 2003, I won't get totally into this, but I wrote a lot about it, then I deleted it. But a journalist named Vicky Ward wrote a story about Jeff for Vanity Fair that was actually going to be an expose. But then basically so much pressure came down on the editor-in-chief that he told her to like squash it.
Get rid of it.
So, and victims heroically came forward to be part of that story and eventually had to be totally cut out. And instead it was like Epstein, man of mystery or some shit, right? But there's another missed opportunity for there to be an investigation started because...
Just self-publish it, guys. We've all got blogs. Like, come on.
Yeah. In 2005, a Florida woman reported that Epstein had molested her stepdaughter, and this woman's story actually led to one of the first proper investigations in which additional victims started to be stacked up. And eventually, in 2007, he was indicted on charges of procuring a child for prostitution.
Oh my God.
This is the part that's going to make you like have a heart attack, which I'm sure you know all of this already, but still, it never gets less enraging. After lots of legal back and forth, eventually Epstein was able to cut a deal that was officially called a quote non-prosecution agreement with the U.S. attorney in Miami, Alexander Acosta, and he was able to plead guilty to charges of solicitation of prostitution and procurement of minors for prostitution in exchange for only 13 months in a special fancy baby boy wing of a county jail and total immunity for all his associates And thrown into the deal was the fact that all of this would be kept secret from all of his victims and accusers. And it gets worse.
I just want to like cut. I just want to fucking burn. Like, why? Why would you do this? And we
I
all
know
know the
exactly
answer.
why. Yeah.
We all know why. But
Yeah.
like, our world, we just need to burn it to the ground. We just need to burn it to the ground and start over. We just need. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is jail a la Pablo Escobar. This is exactly what he's doing here. And remember the Escobar jail, quote unquote.
Yeah, I want to go to jail. It sounds way better than my life.
Escobar jail. Go watch Narcos is exactly like that. So he barely had to spend any time in his comfy county jail because he actually got to go to work release to go to a quote unquote comfortable office for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And even though in Palm Beach, where he was technically convicted, sex offenders don't actually qualify for work release, but Jeffrey got it because he's special. And we will later learn that during this time, he continued to traffic girls. So he did nothing differently because he was, again, out most of the time. So nothing really stopped him at all.
That's fucking, oh my God.
Alexander Acosta.
What was the point of this? What was even the point?
I don't know. I guess to say to the press that they convicted him technically, kind of. But yeah, not a whole lot of point. Alexander Acosta, who, by the way, agreed to this deal, came up with it, would later be appointed as labor secretary by Trump. We'll talk about him a little bit later, too.
Okay.
Trump bestie. After these charges, a lot of his famous friends, a few did like disown him after this, but I would say a lot of his famous friends continued to hang out with him, like Bill Gates, for example, and a lot of charitable institutions, which are great for laundering your reputation when you're a rich piece of shit, as we know. Continued to take his donations, like MIT, which actually continued to take massive donations from him, which they actively tried to conceal the source of the whole time. It's great. Investigators continued to follow Epstein, however. There's some folks, like loose people out in the weeds who never gave up, essentially. Like, we're going to get him someday.
That's
and
good.
About 10 years later, they were able to put together a whole fat dossier of additional charges, because I think they were also waiting to get like a thick thing of charges.
They just needed like another 25, 30 little girls to be raped before they could really go in and get him.
People to come forward. And it's from all times. Right. It's not just from like those years. It's from like all of the years. It sucks because he's offending or he's raping at such a rate, that it sucks. But they do come up with a whole bunch of new charges. And these are largely from 2002 to 2005. And in July 2019, he was eventually arrested at an airport in New Jersey after returning from France. And he was charged with like 1,000 different charges related to sex trafficking young girls. And for all of these charges, he surprisingly faced only up to 45 years, which I also think is weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's it. Why
you can
is
like
that?
You can rob a 7-Eleven and get life. But
you can rape like a gajillion children in just 45 years.
Yeah, maybe up to 45. It would have been less too if he was actually prosecuted.
Yeah.
As the story of that really light, cushy deal from Secretary of Labor Acosta came out, he was forced to resign in 2020, which was funny. But as he did so, he was like, that deal was great. It was awesome. I did a very good job. So he was like very on brand with Trump as far as like, I can't do anything wrong. Like, it was great.
Right.
So, about a month later, on August 10th, 2019, we all know what happens. Jeffrey Epstein was found dead of a quote unquote suicide. I'm doing big, long, sarcastic quotes.
Big quotes, air quotes. Suicide.
So this is obviously very widely disputed, as you already heard Cindy say. Here's why. It's just a few, not an exhaustive list of why. Here's just a peppering, a sampler platter of why this is disputed. People doubt the actual physical logistics of how he could have hung himself in a very small cell. He was in like a shoe, essentially.
Right.
From his bed. He's a very tall, large man as well. So there's some
Mhm.
logistical questions. Photos of the cell showed medicines on the top bunk, which people questioned. They also questioned why he hung himself using clothing and like sheets, essentially, like because he had wires and other ligatures in the cell he could have used. He had a whole ass sleep apnea machine in there that he could have used with tons and tons of long, thick wires, which would have been like maybe more logical.
Right.
His hyoid bone was broken, which, if
Which
you know
mhm,
anything about true crime, you know is a
mm-mm.
strangulation thing.
That's not a like yeah, you didn't get that from a bed sheet around your neck. You
We
got that from
talked about
somebody
that with
choking you.
Rebecca Zahow as well. That's like a dead ass
Mhm.
giveaway that you were
Yes, it
strangled.
is.
And a couple official autopsies happened, and experts actually argued back and forth. But a lot of them said that it looked more like manual strangulation than anything else.
But nobody gives a shit, so
Yeah. His wound around his neck was actually bloody, but blood wasn't found on the bed sheet. And
okay.
the sheet in no way matched up with the wound on the neck. Like when you look, and you can see his autopsy photos online, y'all, if you're like that kind of person, you want to look it up. And I'm telling you, like, I don't know shit, but that does not look like a sheet did that wound.
Right. Right, right, right. Yeah. And
No.
and also like there's no like the other thing just there's no indication that he was going to kill himself, like, at all. Like, they didn't have him on any sort of, like, suicide
Oh
watch
no, he
because it
was.
was
I'll get
oh,
there.
was he?
Yeah, I'll
Oh,
get
I thought
there.
he wasn't.
That's
I thought
that's
he wasn't.
that's my next point. Yeah.
Oh, I
Um
thought he wasn't on one.
so the other thing is that the wire, like, in my opinion, also he could have been, this is another thing, he could have been strangled by with like a thick terrible wire by someone, like garroted essentially, and then they took that with them
Right.
and said, oh, and then they said,
Okay.
oh, it's a noose, right? So that's why it has some autopsy results coming up as it could have been hanging because he was garroted, essentially. That's what I kind of think. um
Okay.
because it looks like something strangled him, but a much more like sharp kind of thing,
Okay.
um not a sheet. Anyway,
Mhm.
he was also, official reports did find misconduct because he was essentially given special treatment because he was allowed to have piles and piles of extra clothes, which he supposedly fashioned into that noose. But again, that's another question. But he was given special treatment again. We know that.
But why was he given so many extra jumpsuits? Like, how is that special? Like, who does that
I
help?
don't
It's
know,
not like they
but
were
it
giving him,
wasn't
like,
fucking
Gucci
allowed.
suits,
Yeah,
like
it still wasn't allowed though, and they did it. So
yeah,
who
that's
knows?
weird. That's fucking weird to me.
Despite already having, so he already had tried to kill himself once before in custody. And the officers who were supposed to check on him constantly, because he was technically supposed to be on suicide watch, did not check on him that night. And they basically left him overnight. And these officers later fudged and like hid the records on this, tried to like hide the official records that they did that. Um, so
Huh.
obviously you can say a lot. If you're saying he was murdered, you can say these guards were conveniently gone, right? That one night,
Mhm.
so they couldn't see what really happened, or they let someone in, or they, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of room there just because they weren't watching, but they technically were supposed to be watching him.
Right,
They
and they
can
just were not.
they just didn't that night for whatever reason.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Whatever
sense.
happened exactly, obviously, it seems pretty sus, but it's clear that
Mhm.
there not being a big Epstein trial, airing out all the evidence, and because
Was super fucking convenient.
about his abuse of girls greatly benefits his many high profile friends who took part. So you can really go in many directions if you're going to speculate about who killed him. You can go anywhere with anyone.
Right, right.
So many options about who this would have benefited. So, although the criminal case ended with his death, civil suits did continue against his estate and against his other associates, which I'll talk about a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, because I wanna know how much money he's actually worth that people are, like, trying to get.
No, so that's like a whole other thing. I didn't even like get into this because I didn't want to talk forever, but like we
Mhm.
still don't know exactly how much he was worth, if it was all bullshit or where it all is, because it was all in offshore secret accounts. So
Oh,
his
no.
money is like what? That's like a big question mark. Um, so I didn't fully get into that, but I know it's very nefarious and nebulous.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and there's tons of civil suits that have continued against his estate, which I won't get into all of them. I will mention 2 associates. Obviously, I have to mention Ghislaine herself, the number 2 to the number 1.
Asshole.
She went missing for a while. Remember that? Like, that was crazy.
Yeah, I do.
Eventually, they caught up with her, and in June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison, which is not enough to me.
It's a fucking joke. Is what it fucking is.
But she's a rich white lady, Cindy. So 20 years it is.
I know.
Again, but if you're like a black person in Florida who does a robbery, life, right? Anyway, I for some reason I went really hard at, well, no, not for some reason. I work in museums, so I wanted to end this by talking about one associate of his in particular, because of course there's also the bigger issue, like you said, of how much evidence was there against people, how much would have been said, how much would he have talked about. Ghislaine has actually outed a lot of people. She's very talking. She's been talking. She's not that holding back, as it were.
I think she knows to be like careful.
Probably she's not outing everyone, but she has been very transparent about a lot of other stuff. Most stuff. But there's definitely the feeling, though, that there's lots and lots and lots of his child raping best friends who have got away with it.
Just a few. Most former presidents.
The only folks who face downfall, faced things because of it are really Prince Andrew, a couple people. But I'm going to highlight one.
Very few.
Yeah, not enough. But I want to talk just for a moment about Leon Black. Do you know about this guy?
No.
He is a billionaire investor, art collector, and a trustee at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, or MoMA, which is why.
Oh, really?
Why I've been following this case, because I follow.
He's a trustee at MoMA.
So he used to be chair of the board. I'll talk about that in a minute.
My goodness, I did not know this.
So he was BFFs with Epstein. Like, he and Epstein, like, they were like, had little necklaces with like matching, like one of the hearts broken off. Like, they were like besties. Absolute besties. He has now been accused of 3 separate incidents incidents of raping teen girls. So 3 separate girls have come forward.
That's interesting. Only 3, because I guarantee it was more.
Yeah, but it's fucking hard to come forward with this shit. So at least 3 have actually been brave enough to do that. In 2021, after years of petitions from artists, petitions from staff, in 2021, he, quote, opted to not seek re-election as chairman of MoMA's board. So he was not, notice I didn't say forced to resign. I said he just didn't seek re-election. He chose. He is still a trustee to this day, as I speak to you now.
That is fucking insane.
Why
is the art world such trash?
The theater in MoMA is the Deborah and Leon Black Family Cinema Center. Like, they have wings named after him. He's given them tons and tons of money.
Name off of stuff. What the fuck?
A lawsuit from late July described a horrific assault he perpetrated against a 16-year-old girl who was developmentally challenged and had autism. She said that at the time she was developmentally around 12, and she was extensively groomed by Epstein. And it was like, she went into detail about this horrific assault. And essentially she was trafficked to Black by Epstein in New York City. In July, he also paid $62 million in a settlement to the U.S. Virgin Islands, because the Virgin Islands themselves, the government, sued several companies, including JP Morgan Chase, for their roles in actively facilitating and consciously knowing about Epstein's trafficking of girls in the islands.
Oh my God, dude, I didn't realize it was JP Morgan Chase. I have a Chase credit card that I'm going to have to cancel like tomorrow.
Yeah, they allowed it to happen. So several different companies, it's a long story I don't have time for, but several different companies knew and were like co-sponsoring it, if you will. There were corporate sponsors for this sex trafficking ring of young girls.
I'm serious too. I'm going to cancel it. Like, I'm done.
And Leon Black paid $62 million to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he's still a trustee at MoMA.
What the fuck, MoMA? Get your shit together.
It's really hard to get rid of a trustee, dude. It's literally impossible.
What do they have to do? Rape a child? Oh, no. They have to do something else. Worse.
Apparently
What's
not.
worse?
There's also the matter of his mystery payment of $158 million to Epstein between 2012 and 2018, which he claims was for quote unquote estate planning advice. But according to everyone who knew Epstein's business, said that that was way more than Leon Black paid other clients, or that Epstein was paid for by similar clients. So from both ends, that payment does not make sense.
That is an insane amount of money. There's
Yes.
no way that you're going to pay somebody that much money to help you plan your estate. You're literally like giving them your fucking estate.
Could it be all the CDs of child rape, Cindy? Could that be why he paid so much?
I wonder. I really wonder.
So there's lots of news stories out there that are basically titled like, "Why did Leon Black pay Jeffrey Epstein $158 million?" Like, why?
I don't want to jump ahead, but I have theories more formed theories than before.
Yeah, also to rewind to the beginning where I said that who could know how Jeffrey Epstein got so rich, I think I have a theory, which is that I think he said, and I really also honestly think, like, learning more about him, which was unpleasant, but I really think that he is a child, and lots of people are like this in this world. He was a child predator first and foremost. And I think he created all of the wealth and the image and the bullshit and the businesses to be a front for this. The child trafficking was his full-time job.
You know what's really interesting to me is Rory, the boyfriend, if you guys don't know, my boyfriend, has worked for millionaires and billionaires. He worked for them for years. He doesn't do it anymore, thank God. But he was working for like the guy that owns Dole out in Hawaii. You know, the guy that like stole all the land from the Hawaiians and like turned it into fucking, pineapple plantations.
Super colonial.
Yeah, piece of shit. Who's still alive. He's like 100. Anyway, Rory worked for him for a while. He worked for a lot of rich people, and he said what all these rich people do is they have this really weird way of thinking where everything that they're doing, they try to figure out a way to turn it into a business. So for instance, like if somebody really likes, a rich person really likes horse racing, then they'll buy a horse track or they'll buy like the number one horse and make money off of it. Like everything that they like to do, they figure out how to make money off of. And to me, that tracks for this. Like he really liked raping children, and so he figured out a way to make money off of that and still enjoy doing it.
Yeah, but I think he wasn't even like a real businessman. It was all just a front for this. Like this was his real passion. This was his real thing.
Exactly. But he was able to make a fuck ton of money off of it.
Yeah, by blackmailing people.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And that's why it's hard to trace the exact source of his wealth or the payments or what happened, because they're making these payments in
even where it is.
Yep. So that's my very abbreviated, as much as I could, story of Jeffrey Epstein. He is a real piece of shit. Sorry it went on forever. It was hard to hard to truncate it, but there it is.
But my question is, do you think that the people that he was blackmailing finally got together and were like, let's give the CIA or whomever, probably the CIA, the go ahead to arrest him, to release enough information to arrest him? We'll get him in a cell and then we'll kill him.
It's not impossible.
And then he can't blackmail us anymore.
It's not impossible.
Feel like that. I feel like that's,
Yeah, I mean, this shit lends itself so well to conspiracy theories. And the one thing that is irritating is obviously the Epstein didn't kill himself, which is like practically a meme or whatever. Like that.
It is a meme.
Yeah. But like that kind of, which we obviously agree with the sentiment of it, but what's annoying to me is that people can use it for all kinds of political things because his friends were so many controversial people. You got Bill Gates in there, you got Clinton in there. You can kind of take the Epstein starting point and make whatever conspiracy theory you want. Like it's kind of a DIY your own.
Well, here's the thing. The CIA has pulled off more atrocities than probably any single group in the history of the world. So to like call that a conspiracy theory, I think is not fair because it's been proven time and time again. So when it's like, well, they did these 15 things, but you're crazy for saying they did this other thing. And it's like, am I really though? Like we keep getting more and more proof of the horrible things that they do. Why is like one horrible thing a conspiracy theory where the rest have like been proven to be fact after the fact, But also, like, I don't know. I don't know. I think that if you are the type of person who's going to sit there and be like, well, Republicans suck because they were at Epstein Island. Well, Democrats suck because they're no. The predator class was all there. They were all there, both sides.
Yeah,
These motherfuckers are all there.
Evil clearly is not about party lines. Like,
no, it's about money.
Yeah.
And if I mean,
it's about private
show me a
jets, and
billionaire that's not a piece of shit.
it's about private
Like, good
jets
luck.
and private islands, and
It's about power. When
Yeah.
people have more money than God, as it were, they want to find another way because it
Yeah.
gets boring. It's like, well, I now can I have all the money I could ever need, and I still want more. I'm hungry for more. So these twisted motherfuckers, this is what they do. It makes me crazy. Don't get me started, Diva. You can't do conspiracy theory shit with me. You can't.
I mean, this is a can of worms, dude. Like, you could go off on Reddit and Wikipedia and just go all night. Like, Epstein is endless.
And I've kept my conspiracy theory shit like pretty mild because honestly, there's a lot that are really fucking stupid. But like Epstein and the whole connection to like the power class, like that's
and also
that
with, I was gonna say I was saying my husband too, like with QAnon, what's interesting about it is that like one of their premises of like there's like secret child sex trafficking rings that with politicians and wealthy people and elites and stuff. I'm like, yeah, like this with Epstein that happened, right? So it's like,
yeah, there really was.
So like they take that and then they do a few more like extra things with their narrative I don't love,
mental gymnastics, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. But what's interesting is they do start from a very believable, realistic theory.
I feel like QAnon was created by the elite to like throw everybody off the trail by being like, those people are crazy. And it's like, well, they are. They absolutely are. But like the starting point is 100% based in like
but then
reality.
Like Trump is a hero and he's gonna resurrect Kennedy. That's where they start to lose you, But like
because you're like, what the fuck? Yeah.
No, Trump isn't the hero to destroy it. He's actually like definitely in it.
Yeah. And really quickly, since we're talking about rapists, can we talk about Danny Masterson and also Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis and their fucking dumpster fire response to all of this? Oh, I almost cried tears of joy when I found out that Danny Masterson got 30 years to life.
Yeah.
That guy is the biggest piece of shit. And like the Mila Kunis, I don't know if you've watched their quote unquote apology video.
Oh God, I heard about it.
But like they look like they should be like smoking cigarettes and like drinking beer while they're just like you can tell they're like, listen, you fucking peons, like we don't want your fucking bullshit, so we're gonna release this half-assed apology. Like fuck all of those people. Straight the fuck up, dude. People with money are fucking twisted. Ugh, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, fuck all them. Are we ready to continue this party? All right. Well, I decided my modern day villain number one was going to be none other than GSK / EARONS, otherwise known as Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. And this is the Golden State Killer. He is the Visalia ransacker. He is the East Area rapist. He is the original Night Stalker. He's all these things, but more than anything, he is like the biggest bitch that ever lived.
That's a great way to sum him up. Yeah.
He is just a pathetic little fucking loser. The more I read about him, the more I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
This guy?
Really sad.
It is. It's not even sad because fuck him. Yeah, he's sad. His existence. Ugh. Okay, now that I've got that off my chest.
Okay.
This little turd was born November 8th, 1945. He was the second of 4 children born to Joseph James DeAngelo Sr. and his wife, Kay. The family was an army family. He was an army brat. He moved around a lot as a young kid. He went to Germany. He went all over America, like the U.S. And beyond that, even after settling in California, why can't I talk? In the Sacramento area, he was uprooted a lot. He didn't have a lot of stability. And even after they settled, his parents pretty much just neglected and ignored him. His mother worked and his father was very absent because he was doing his like army thing. I think his dad was like in the Air Force. So Joe ended up kind of taking on the role of caretaker for his siblings, getting them ready for school, making sure they eat. Friends later said, there was always food in the fridge, but there was never a parent at home. So their basic needs were taken care of, but they were not really loved, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Like their parents didn't really seem to give a shit about them. They went through the motions of caring for their responsibilities, but that's kind of how the kids were seen.
Okay.
Joe ended up becoming really close with the family of a woman named Judy. They lived in the Sacramento area, and they were in a similar situation in that her father was, what do they call him? Like when you're in the army, a lifer, like an army lifer. He was a career man. But her parents were way more involved in the life of her and her five brothers. So Joe became best friends with Judy's older brother and came to call her parents mom and pop. He even started dating one of Judy's best friends that he met through the family, eventually proposing to her at a cabin during their senior year of high school. This friend said no.
Okay.
At this time, Joe's real parents, who were already very distant, not only with him, but with each other, ended up divorcing. And his dad had actually already moved to Korea and just stayed there and got remarried and had more kids. And I could not find enough about this to substantiate this entirely, but I did hear, or read rather, that he had more kids and gave them the same names that he had named his like American family. So
Ugh,
he had Joseph DeAngelo Jr. and he had like his sisters and
that's so
you know,
demented. That's so sick.
it's extremely fucking demented. That's the perfect
Oh,
word for it.
God.
So Joe's mother ended up working as a waitress to make ends meet, and she also ended up remarrying, which all of this is to say that he had a very unstable and lonely life and that he had to seek out the family that he always wanted.
Right.
He did have it with Judy and her family, but it wasn't the same as having his own family, his own, and he was really close with his siblings, but I think the way that his parents treated him really fucked him up. So he's in high school. He finally makes these friends with Judy. And he lived in Rancho Cordova, which was a suburban area in Sacramento, near where I'm from. After Judy's friend turned down his marriage proposal, and with his parents divorcing, the then 18-year-old Joe decided to quit high school and also join the army because why not?
Yeah.
He's got nothing else going on. So he did, and he went to training and eventually went to Vietnam for a few months. Before this, his very close friend, Judy, again, the same friend, had a really creepy experience at her house. One night, Judy woke up in bed because she could feel someone watching her through her window. She said she was too scared to move, and it took her dog barking to get the stranger to leave. She laid there for like minutes, just like seeing this shadow outside of her window. Now, years later, she and everyone else wonders if this was Joseph DeAngelo outside of her window.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a scary thing to think about considering that they were like close, like family close, like brother and sister close.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Hmm. So anyway, he goes to Vietnam via the Navy, and upon his return, he settles in Sacramento and starts going to Sierra College. Now, he was in like basic training and in the army for 2 or 3 years before. And actually, I think he came back and then got discharged. And then got sent to Vietnam, I mean, and then did a couple months and came back. So he had like a longer tour of just like regular Navy shit, came home, lived with his mom shortly, and then went back out and served in Vietnam. Right. So then he comes back to Sacramento and he starts going to Sierra College, which is, I believe, in Rockland. And it's just like a, junior college.
Yeah.
And this is where he meets a young woman named Bonnie. And Bonnie, I believe, was only about 17 at this time. And Joe was, I think, 21.
Okay.
So her father, who was very old school, like he didn't believe that women should go to school. He thought college was a waste. So
Woo.
like he sent her, yeah. This is in
Okay.
like the 70s.
Okay.
And he sent her brothers to like real quote unquote colleges, like I think Sacramento State, but
Sure.
he'd only let her go to like a junior college. He did not like that Joe was older than Bonnie. But
Mm-hmm.
once he heard that not only was Joe in Vietnam, but that he'd been injured, this dad really warmed up to him.
Oh my God.
So Joe, the way that Joe won him over was by telling him about how the tip of one of his fingers was blown off in the war. He told both Bonnie and Bonnie's father that he had got shot at and that it took the tip of his finger off, a stray bullet.
Mm-hmm.
He told this, friend Judy that he probably stalked, that this was actually a mistake that he made with some sort of explosive that ended up taking his finger off.
Sounds right.
So obviously, yeah, he's lying to gain favor and he's just a big, doof.
Yeah.
But it works, and Bonnie's father likes D'Angelo. He thinks Joe's a good guy, whatever. Bonnie was a lot. She was defiant of her father, obviously. Like she didn't agree that she wasn't worth getting an education, which is a good thing. But
Yeah.
otherwise, she was a big rule follower and didn't talk back much, having grown up with such a domineering father. And Joe fucking loved this. He loved having complete control, and he would do things to like scare her and like fuck with her. Like he rode a motorcycle and she'd get on it and he would do like dangerous shit. Like at first it was romantic. He'd take her on rides. He taught her how to lean into the turns. And then once he kind of got his claws in, he would do things to make her uncomfortable and to scare her.
Mm.
And she later said that he did things like he thought the rules didn't apply to him. He'd steal things, he'd break into places, he'd ignore signs. Just, things to feel like a tough guy, things
He's
to
so
feel like,
edgy.
yeah, edgy and also special and like,
Yeah.
he can get away with it. This is also really fucking crazy, but she said that he would make her have sex with him for like multiple hours. That he would
Oh,
use tantric sex methods to like
oh,
continue going
God.
on. Yeah, and that it was almost unbearable for her because it was so painful, but because of the way that she grew up with her father and just her
Yeah.
relationship to this asshole, she never complained. They were
So
together
rapey already. Yeah.
very much, yeah, because there's no way he didn't know that she didn't like it. There's
Yeah.
no way that he was
Oh,
not
yeah.
paying attention,
Yeah.
you know? They were together only 8 months before he proposed, and she said yes, and she later said that she said yes as a way of getting away from her father, but obviously,
Mm.
when you have a parent like this, you're drawn to the wrong people,
Yeah.
or at least when you're young at first. So this was actually posted in the paper, but with no date for the wedding. Eventually, the two ended up going to the same college for a while. He was going for criminal justice, and he was failing one of the classes and she was getting straight A's. So he asked her to help him cheat by letting him sit next to her so he could copy off of her paper.
Ugh.
She had never said no to him before, but this is where she drew the line. And he became obsessed with this because he was
Mm.
so upset that she had told him no
Oh my
that he
God.
never let it go. And it got to the point where he was so like scary to her and so obsessed with this that she broke it off with him.
Wow.
And yeah, and he did not like that. Shortly after, he came to her window with a gun, held it in her face, and said, "Come outside. We're going to we're going to Reno, and we're going to get married."
Mm.
She ran out of her door, like army crawled out so he couldn't shoot at
Oh
her.
my
Went and
God.
got her dad. Now you would think Mr. Army Dad here is gonna fuck Joe up, right? He's gonna fucking
No.
call the cops. He's gonna do
Ugh.
this. No, nope. He had a man to man with Joe, had him leave, and did not call the cops because he knew Joe wanted to become a cop. And if he called the cops about this, it would never happen. So Joe left, and that was the end of their relationship.
Oh
Now,
my
this all
gosh.
happened in 1971. Within 2 years of this, he had already met and married a woman named Sharon Huddle, who was his wife until his arrest. Now, I did say that, and it's not a mistake. They were separated for years, but she remained his legal wife all the
Mm.
way up to the time that he was arrested, and I believe even till today.
Wow.
And many people speculate it's so that she wouldn't be compelled to testify against him. Because if you're married,
Mm.
you cannot be forced to testify against your spouse.
Interesting. Okay.
And she, throughout the entire legal proceedings, was extremely uncooperative. So it
Okay.
really makes you wonder.
Interesting.
Also, interesting fact about Sharon, she is on a board of people who are like super, super against surrogacy, like surrogate motherhood, like people paying
What?
surrogates. Yeah, because they consider a form of child trafficking, of like human trafficking,
What? I
where
had
you're
no
paying
idea
people for
people
children.
even like opposed that. Like that's so
Yeah,
offensive.
I didn't know that either. But yeah, she's like
Wow.
the head of, she's a lawyer and she's like on a board of people that
So
are
we
like
know she's kind of an
really
asshole at
vehemently
the
against
very
it. Yeah,
minimum.
yes,
Minimum.
she's
Yeah.
a dickhead. Yeah. So they were married in November 1973, and Joe got a job at the police department in Exeter, California, which is right near Visalia, which I believe is in Placer County. So we're kind of in
Okay.
like the southern central area of
Gotcha.
California.
Yeah.
According to an article in the Exeter Sun at the time of his hiring, quote, James DeAngelo Jr. believes that without law and order, there can be no government. And without a democratic government, here can be no freedom. Law enforcement is his career, he says, and his job is serving the community.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What a great summary of a cool guy.
Yeah, a cool man of service. Fuck him. Now, before this, it's thought that he may have been the Cordova cat burglar because there was a string of burglaries in Rancho Cordova in the early 70s, but we don't know for sure, but I'm going to go ahead and say probably.
Yeah.
And now, while Joe was living and working in Exeter, the Visalia ransacker was wreaking havoc in the area, breaking into homes and at one point attempting to abduct a woman. Now, this abduction happened in 1975, I believe, when the woman, Elizabeth Hupp, and her father were outside her home. D'Angelo attempted to abduct her, and her father came to her aid. In response, D'Angelo shot him in the face, killing him, and then kicked Elizabeth in the face 3 times before fleeing. So he was obviously very pissed that this abduction didn't work out. And although there are suspicions that he killed even before this is the first known murder for this absolute piece of shit.
Okay.
Now, much later during impact statements, because spoiler alert, he's caught, obviously.
Yes.
And, his trial happened. Elizabeth would talk about how she had to live with the suspicion of killing her own father for decades.
Wow.
Yeah. And how this ruined her entire fucking
There's
life.
a lot of also in his wake, a lot of accused husbands whose lives were ruined as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's tons of people who stand accused of
Yeah.
There was one guy, I think that DNA later exonerated him, but yeah, it was really bad. So during the same time in the 73 to 75, he broke into and destroyed parts of 100 or more homes in the Visalia and
Wow.
Exeter areas.
Visalia ransacking time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So besides the random murder, which I think was him kind of testing the waters, in attempting not to murder. I don't think his intention was to murder. I think his intention was, well, maybe to murder her, but not the random shooting murder, but he was trying to abduct. But other than that, this was all just breaking into homes, getting his footing in what he wants to do.
Right.
Now, these random home attacks stopped abruptly in late 1975, and in early 1976, Joe and his wife moved up to the Auburn area, back to Sacramento, where he joined the police force there. Now, during this time, the rapes and attacks started again. Now, if you pay attention, where he goes and all of these things happen and where he leaves, they all of a sudden stop.
Okay.
So as a refresher, because I'm not going to get into every single individual attack because it would take a really long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's 100 of them out there.
Yeah.
His MO, basically, he would break into the homes while people were sleeping. He would try multiple windows and doors. There were many people who later came out and were like, yeah, we heard him trying to break into our house, but he didn't get in. Or we heard someone trying to break in.
We heard weird sounds.
These reports were happening at the same time that the actual break-ins were happening. So he would get in. He started first attacking single women. Then he started seemingly intentionally attacking couples, which means he was staking out their homes. He was watching them. He was planning.
Big, long prep period for him.
Yes. Yeah. He would make the women tie up the men. Then he would tie up the women. He would often place plates or glassware or other things that would make a lot of noise if the men moved onto the backs of the men and tell them, if this falls, I will kill you. I'll kill your wife.
Yeah.
He would then rape
fabric on the TV.
Yes. Cover the TV with fabric. That was his other weird calling card thing. He would then rape and assault the women. He would eat food in the house.
Yeah.
He would pretend to leave and then come back to scare people, just as a method of torturing them. And most importantly, to my point about him being the world's biggest bitch, he would often go into the corner and cry and ask for his mommy.
Yeah. I mean, you don't get much more little bitch than that.
Fucked up.
Little bitch behavior.
This guy has got to be a psychiatrist, dream come true, trying to figure out all the things going on with this guy.
He's definitely many forensic pathology fucking dissertations that rolled into one.
Oh yeah. Also, in one of his attacks, he said, "I hate you, Bonnie," to the woman while he was assaulting her.
Ted Bundy also had a thing where he was killing his ex over and over, but I don't think he ever said it like that. But
right. But this, he actually let it slip at one point.
Yeah.
Like, I think he was taking out the aggression for his mother not being there, not loving him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was taking out his aggression for Bonnie rejecting him. And fuck him. Go to a therapist, you dumb asshole. So the Bonnie thing was actually a clue that police held on to for many, many years. And obviously really fit once they found him. Like, there's Bonnie. There's
Yep.
fucking Bonnie
I found
right there. That's
Bonnie.
like
Yeah.
smoking gun. That had to be such a moment when they figured that out.
Yep.
So, police, though they didn't say openly at the time, were 100% sure that the attacker was either military or an ex-cop or a current cop.
Yeah.
And they were so sure of this that anybody that wanted to be on like the task force for him had to submit DNA samples, like a saliva sample, to exclude them
Yeah.
as a suspect
Wow.
because Joe here had really weird saliva. He had like a very particular thing in his saliva.
Yeah.
So they had to submit for that because obviously, DNA wasn't a full thing at this time and he was just leaving it everywhere.
They were
But they did
fully
have a
like, he
little
could
bit.
be in our midst, like 100%.
Oh, yeah. And they knew it. And, they knew it because of the way that he stalked his victims, the
Yeah.
tactics that he used to enter the homes, the way that he escaped. And also, I didn't go into this too much, but I did want to note that there were multiple run-ins with him during these attacks.
Yeah.
One guy cornered him and he had a gun, like Joseph had a gun, and he was like, "Get away from me, dude, like I'll fucking kill you." And so the guy just had to walk away. He just walked away
Yeah.
and let him
So
fucking escape.
frustrating. Yeah.
There were times that like cops were right near him, like so many fucking
Wasn't there one
times.
in Visalia where the cop was chasing him and he's on a little fucking bike and he somehow got
Yes,
away, jumping
got away
across
on a bicycle.
yards?
Yep, and
Yeah.
getting over. Yeah, and he was always doing this near like culverts or areas. And so that's the really like Sacramento, there's so much farmland, there's so
Yeah.
much open space. There's so many culverts, there's so many places that you can just like disappear. And he was using this like to his advantage. He was scouting the neighborhoods, figuring out all the back ways to get in and out and attacking. So, in the midst of all of these rapes, this motherfucker escalated again. And this time I believe the escalation was intentional. Because first we have break ins, then we have break ins with assault, then we have break ins with assaults of couples. And now, on February 2nd, 1978, Brian and Kate Maggiore were walking their dog near their apartment in Rancho Cordova in Sacramento
Hmm.
County. We don't know exactly what happened, but they encountered a man in a ski mask with a gun who took them to a backyard and shot them to death. Now, I don't know if, again, this was intentional, but I believe that it was, or I believe that he was happy to do it because this set him on a path of murder and ended with 13 total deaths, at least, that we
Wow.
know of. He
Yeah.
murdered 13 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now his wife has a baby and he takes a 5-year break after his first daughter was born, but he picked it up right back. And this, these murders and rapes are happening while he has a wife and 3 fucking daughters.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Beyond attacking and killing people all over California, mostly in the areas where he lived, he also did really dumbass shit like shoplifting. And in 1979, he was actually arrested for stealing bear spray and a hammer. The
Hmm.
people who arrested him said that they had to tie him to a chair to get him to keep
Wow.
him from escaping because he was fighting so hard to leave so that he wouldn't get caught.
That's so dumb. I'm sorry. That's
Yes,
dumb.
it is. But he was caught and he was fired from his job. And I do want to say that police later came out and they were like, he was a terrible cop. He was fucking lazy. He was always eating. We were calling him Junk Food Joe
Oh
because all
my
he did was
God.
eat shitty food.
It's also really
Um,
special too when cops are like, when you're too shitty at whatever you're doing and you're not good enough for the military or the cops. That's always like,
yeah. The cops are like,
wow,
yo, this guy's a loser. It's like, wow, you really
low.
are like the loseriest loser who ever
Like
losered.
there's a
Like,
low
what the fuck?
bar and you are not clearing it.
You just like slithered under it like a fucking snake.
Yeah,
Like,
you did
oh
not.
my
You didn't
God.
clear it. No.
So, yeah, so he was a shitty cop and they fired him. And apparently, after he was fired, he threatened and stalked the police chief, which, like, good idea. Good idea, psycho.
Great.
Like, obviously, this guy has a lot of fucking problems and he can't, like, control himself. But it's just interesting the way that he handled being fired by a man. Because I also want to point out that right around this time is when he stopped raping and murdering.
Wow.
And I'm wondering if the attacks were somehow connected to his feeling of control and superiority via his badge. Because
Yeah.
basically almost all of the attacks and definitely all of the murders and rapes occurred while he was a police officer.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So anyway, that's an overview of his life and crimes. He raped over 50 women. He
Ugh.
tormented many of his victims, both by tricking them, like I was saying, leaving and
Yeah.
then coming back. But he would also call them
Oh
after
God.
and
Yeah.
torment them. You can find some of these calls on YouTube. They're fucking terrifying. Like
Yeah.
he sounds like a fucking like wild animal. And then he killed 13 people and then he just stopped. He got a
Wow.
job at a grocery store where he worked for 20 plus years. Later on during his trial, his daughters referred to him as a great dad.
Wow.
Yeah. And the case, while it never really went cold, sort of lost a lot of steam. That is until 2013 when an amazing true crime writer and all around badass named Michelle McNamara took an interest in this case. And she started drawing connections between many of these cases. She first wrote articles for Los Angeles Magazine, but she quickly became obsessed with the GSK case, which, P.S., he is only known as the Golden State Killer because of Michelle
Yes.
McNamara naming
Yes.
him
He
that.
knows that she knew that branding was helpful in garnering
Yes.
press.
Yes. And also, it's a much better name than EARONS because
Yeah.
it encompasses all the area. Well, also EARONS is a weird name, but
Euron
it
sucks.
encompasses, yeah, it encompasses all the areas.
Golden
He
State.
raped and murdered all over California.
No, literally Sacramento to San Diego, like up and down, up and down.
Yes, up and down. And I do want to say that, in my opinion, she is in many ways his final victim.
Yeah.
Because in 2016, while in the midst of writing her book, which was fantastic, by the way,
Oh
and
yeah.
having a lot of difficulty sleeping, Michelle died in her sleep after taking too many pills.
Yeah.
And she did this because she couldn't fucking sleep because she was researching this case. And I mean, she was going
Yeah.
all over California. She was getting police files. She was interviewing detectives. She became very close with Paul Holes, who ultimately helped to crack this case.
Mm-hmm.
And also, after her death, Paul Holes, as well as her husband, Patton Oswalt, and another guy who I don't want to talk about, and some other people helped to finish her book.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic fucking book, and it will keep you up. I mean, you've read it, right? It's just
Yes.
fucking terrifying.
No, I was
So I can't
gonna
imagine, like,
do a shout out. It's also one of the most incredibly written things I've ever read in my
it's
life.
so well written.
That
Jesus
is, I
Christ.
aspire to write an eighth as good as her. Like she's
Yeah.
incredible.
She is just yeah.
Yeah.
Her writing is I just got
Oof.
goosebumps. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
God damn. And so I can't imagine how tormented she was, considering how
Yeah.
scared I was just reading her book.
Just yeah.
We could talk about her all night, but we won't. But if you don't know who she is, find out. Her blog is still up. You can read her writing.
Yeah.
She covered a lot of other cases. She's incredible.
And it's what a shame that she didn't get
Anyway,
to write like 20 more true crime books because like I
it's
would have
fucking
read them
bullshit.
all. I would have read them all.
It's fucking bullshit that she
Yeah.
didn't. And her true crime book, it talks about her and her life. It's just
Yeah.
incredible. It's
It's
just
great.
fucking incredible. Just the book is called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And it comes from something that he actually wrote to one of his, like, either a
Yeah.
newspaper or one of his victims. Terrifying shit.
There's an HBO show version of it too that's pretty good.
Yeah, which is really fucking creepy. I couldn't watch it by myself. But not as good as the book, but very good. So anyway, in 2018, her book came out, but her effect on the case had already, had its effect long before then. And her interest helped bring the case back to the forefront for police. And these police started using genealogy to trace the killer, to find
Yes.
GSK. And they ended up actually doing it. They were able to trace who he was. So sorry, I have a thing in my mouth, which I will now take out because I'm talking. Funny enough, they used genealogy. They had like 170 people. And they first went to Oregon and took DNA from like a super sick man in like like a home up in Oregon because they thought it might be him. His daughter actually ended up like donating DNA, and it helped them narrow it down to Joseph James DeAngelo. And like I said, Michelle McNamara's book came out in 2018, and Joseph, this piece of shit, was also caught in 2018. And in fact, Patton and Paul Holes and all the people involved in the book were on a book tour when they got the call that he had
Yeah.
been arrested.
It's a great
I'm getting
story.
goosebumps. Yeah, and that he was in custody because honestly, I do not believe that this case would be solved to this day without her.
Yeah.
I really don't. So he was arrested. They got his DNA from like a straw or something near his home, and then they knew that he was like a really grumpy, grouchy guy. Like his family's like, "Oh, he's so great," but like everybody else who knew him was like, "The guy's a fucking asshole. He's a grump. He's a shitty
He's
fucking
definitely
neighbor. Like
like,
we don't
kids,
fucking
get
like
off of my
him."
yard kind of guy. Like
Yeah,
that's the vibe I
very,
get.
very much.
Yeah.
Big time. And so police like set a trap where one guy came up and was like, "Oh, I'm lost. Can you give me directions?" And D'Angelo was like in the middle of being like, "You can get fucked," when the cops swarmed him.
Uh,
And yeah, they took him into custody. And he, throughout the trial, he pretended that he was like, elderly and frail, and he
mhm.
stopped eating so he could lose weight. But there's video of him like standing on the table in his
Yep.
fucking cell, like making everything just so.
Harvey
And
Weinstein
then
also did this where he's like, "Oh, I'm frail all of a sudden,"
it's
right?
such a
And
narcissistic
yeah,
response.
yeah,
Like,
trying to look like the victim, trying to look
how can I
persecuted.
make myself the yes, exactly. Like, how
Yeah.
can I be the victim
I
right now?
forget
Like,
his
what
name,
can
but there
I
was
do?
also an Auschwitz guard that did that, where they proved
Yeah.
later on that he was physically in great shape, but all of a sudden at
Yeah.
trial he was like fainting. He was like, I'm so
And
old
it's
and
like,
sick."
dude, you can't, nobody gives a fuck, dude. We all hope
Yeah.
you die. Like, nobody
Yeah.
cares that you're fainting, you phony.
Yeah.
But so he was doing this. The prosecution wanted to enter this into evidence, but at this point, he had already admitted to like almost all of his crimes. He openly admitted to it in return for 26 life sentences just to kind of get it done because they were like,
Yeah.
dude, your DNA is fucking everywhere, idiot. Like we
Yeah.
fucking know it's you,
Yeah.
whatever. So he was given 26 life sentences. The judge did not allow that tape to be part of the proceedings. It was quote unquote sealed, but like you can find it on YouTube. You can watch him like doing like calisthenics and shit, and then like getting in a wheelchair and pretending that he's like drooling on
And
himself.
also, let's
Um,
not forget covering up his TV with the goddamn blanket, which is like very
mhm.
haunting as fuck to see.
That is really fucking haunting to see him do that when
Yeah.
that's something that he did to all of his victims. Oh,
Yeah.
it's just
Gave me
chilling.
those videos gave me chills of him in the cell.
It is
Yeah.
fucking chilling. This man, there's something deeply fucked up about this, obviously. So, victim impact statements ranged from people crying to people ridiculing his tiny penis, because yes, it is tiny. Not that it matters, except in this case, it does.
And you know what?
Um,
Whatever those victims got to do, if that makes them feel better, do it.
if she wants to, yeah, if this person wants to be like, you have a tiny dick and like, I'm better than you, fuck yeah, dude.
Well, I
He
mean,
deserves it. You can say whatever you want.
with the kind of guy he is, that does get to him too. So, like, fair.
Oh, for sure. He would not look at anybody in the courtroom. He refused to look at
Hmm.
any of the victims. He just kept his eyes averted and sat there quietly. He didn't say a
Also,
fucking
his
word.
voice surprised me. I watched all of this, like this proceeding, like the victim statements, everything. I watched almost all of it,
Yeah.
and like when he finally spoke, he was like, "I'm sorry." Like I know his voice like surprised me. It was like
I know. I was like, okay,
dweebier.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was like a
It
lot
was really
dweebier
fucking weird.
than I
Yeah.
thought.
Did you see when Bonnie was in the court?
No.
So, one of his victims came forward and was like, I want you to look at me. And he wouldn't look at her. She's like, well, I brought someone for you, my best friend. And it was Bonnie who rejected him. She took her
Oh,
mask off and fucking stared him
that's
down. And he
sick.
refused to look over. I know, such a fucking boss move. So, anyway, this piece of shit is rotting away in prison. It's also really interesting that he, as far as I can tell, has not spoken to a single member of his family since he was arrested. He's completely
Really?
cut them off, refuses to speak to them.
Wow.
Mhm.
So it's almost like the whole family was kind of this weird ruse and he was actually just serial killing in his mind all
No,
along or something.
I think that he is so fucking fragile and
Hmm.
so fucking
Yeah.
ashamed
Yeah. 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 He
that
doesn't want
he's
to answer
just
for it.
refusing. Yes. Yes. Because think about it. He was
Yeah.
ashamed that Bonnie turned him down. So he was attacking people. You know what I mean? Like he's got a
Mm-hmm.
shame thing.
For
And I think
sure.
that's what it is. So in any case, that's GSK. He is a piece of shit. I cannot fucking wait for this motherfucker to die. I'm just like counting down the days. He's in his 70s, so it may take a while, but we've got time, right? We can wait. He's not
Yeah.
going anywhere. He's just,
Yeah.
rotting away in a tiny little cell, being a piece of shit. Yeah, there's a lot more about him out there if you guys are interested, but there's my story.
Wow. Oh my gosh. We just did casually Epstein and Golden State Killer in one
I
go.
know. That
Wow.
was
Wow.
rough. I gotta take a nap. Woo! Okay, guys. Thanks.
Wow.
I think we're just gonna get out of here, right? We're done.
Yeah.
That was epic.
Good
That was a
work.
marathon. If
Yeah.
you're still listening, which I mean, obviously you would be, that was cool. But thank you for hanging tough on these massive fucking cases.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for your support. Please like, rate, review, tell your friends, tell your family. Thanks to our patrons. You are literally the wind beneath our wings. We probably couldn't do this without you guys because we just, we need you. So thank you. And until the second half of this epic, crazy topic,
stay
off our
wings.
Stay off them. Bye.